Hello and welcome to Japanese Craft Beer Reviews. Today we're going to have a special session. We're going to review 4 different beers from TDM 1874 Brewery in Yokohama. And we are lucky enough to have the brewer of TDM 1874 with us today, and that is George Juniper. Hello, George.
Hello. Hiya.
And I'm also here along with Mark and the man formerly known as Boozy Now as well. And we're going to hear a little bit about the brewery from George and also George's history with the brewery. And then one by one, we will take a look at 4 brews, including some fairly recent ones from the brewery as well. Well, George, what can you tell us about the brewery, the history of TDM 1874?
So the brewery itself, we did our first batch in January 2017. So a little bit over 4 years now. The name of the brewery, the 1874 part, is actually from the parent company, which is a liquor store, and that's the year that started it. The liquor store is called Sakaguchiya. And historically, Nihonshu sales were sort of going down a little bit, and so with craft beer rising, it was a way of sort of not sinking the business into one hole, having different areas of the liquor market covered. And that's why a small brewery got built here.
Okay. So the Sakaguchiya was also a sake producer as well?
No, just a sakaya, so distributor.
Okay.
We also deliver to restaurants a lot in Yokohama, sort of Noge area. And then our territories getting further and further up into Tokyo, but typically sort of the Yokohama side of Shibuya. Yeah.
Okay. Can you tell us about the name a little bit? What the TD and M and the 1874? What do those imply?
So TDM, we're based in Tokai, Chiba. So it's 10 days market, which is roughly what Tokai Ichiba translates to.
I see. So is 10 ka day, is that right?
Yeah.
And Ichiba means regular marketplace.
Yeah. Yeah. So there used to be a market here. Back in the day when you wouldn't have a marketplace that's in one place in town, it would be on the 10th of the month.
I see.
That's the sort of idea behind why the place is called that.
Okay.
The 1874 again is the founding year of the sakaya. Owner.
Okay. Now, how about you and when you came along, and what was the situation or your history actually, maybe before you came to TDM 1874?
Right.
How long in Japan?
I've been in Japan 10 years now, just over. And I'd started, my history really was, I started home brewing when I was 13 in the UK. And then I started working at Dark Star Brewery in the UK when I was 19. I moved over to Japan in 2011. I was at Kyuchi Shuzo for a year, then moved on to Brewer Brewing. Had a few years out teaching English, and then started at TDM. I started here in 2016 as the factory was being built. Yeah.
Okay. And according to RateBeer, there are 71 different beers produced. I imagine you probably made a few more than that.
Yeah, there's a few that haven't been checked in, I guess.
Yeah, and on Untapped, there's 72 beers listed at an average of 3.76 out of 5. Pretty high ratings overall. So, is there anything you would say, anything you would single out as being special about TDM? Something that you apart from other breweries in Japan? Something you're most proud of, perhaps?
I guess.
You won some award.
Hard to answer that without blowing my own trumpet a bit, but
you can blow your trumpet here. I mean,
blow the trumpet.
Okay.
No, I guess what makes us a little bit different is that a lot of the beers come from a English point of view, even when making sort of German or American styles. That I still feel there's like a sort of British sensibility in it, where you're my goal with any beer I make is like, if you have a beer and you don't want another one of it, it's not a good beer. Like every beer should be, you know, you can drink one after the other, make it sessionable, and that's kind of what that's the British mentality of brewing, I guess.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. Great. Yeah. You make the best bitter. That, I think several people have commented on. It's absolutely an exceptional beer. In a style we don't see a lot in Japan.
No, it's still a style you don't see a lot. You'll see some people brew it as like a gente maybe once or twice a year, or people tend to go for ESBs because they're a little more punchy, a little more forgiving.
Yeah. Okay.
They don't need quite as fine a balance as a best bitter does. But,
Yeah.
There's a few good ones out there. I think they'd make a good best bitter, but I think that's just for their tap rooms. I don't think it's a year round.
Okay. And yours, of course, is a year round beer.
Yeah. It's actually more popular than I thought it would be. I thought it would be just, you know, something that I make every now and then, but it's been really well received, luckily.
Great. And Mark Allen, would you like to grill him in any way? I mean, anything you'd like to find out?
Yeah, sure. Well, since you're on the best bitter, and I just had one after quite a long time. I haven't had your beers for a while, and just when you found out that you had your own online shop, I put in an order. So, when I tried it, the thing that stood out for me, and it reminded me when you came to Kyoto, is that the malt is really rich and flavorful without being excessively heavy, and that's something that is that the British. I mean, is this the British sensibility that you're talking about, or is that part of it?
Yeah, it is part of it. Typically, like when I was younger as well, I was all about malty beers. You know, wasn't really into hoppy beer at all, to be honest. And that's changed as I've gotten older and been in Japan a little bit more. So back then, IPA was a thing in the UK, but it wasn't a thing like it is now, where it's, you know, it's taken over the market. It's everything's IPA. It used to be a little bit more, you know, craft beer was microbreweries. It was bitters and porters and stuff like that. So I've very much grown up to be focused on malt. So always trying to use the correct malt. And there's a tendency with American craft breweries that they'll use a very, very plain base malt and then use the malts to try and build up more flavor on these kind of beers, whereas that shouldn't be the way. It's use really flavorful base malt, which is what I do for British styles, and then you add a little bit of accent malts in. So that's where it's full-bodied but not sweet.
Yeah, that really stood out for me as a malt. It's just reminded me, I hadn't had anything like it for quite a while. So it was really pleasant.
Yeah.
Enjoyed it.
Yeah, and that's from English Marisotto. It's there's a lot of brewers who are scared to use it because it's so big and in your face and as a base malt.
Yeah.
But you really you need to be using those malts to make English bitters. That's the style. That's what they're made of.
Right.
Yeah.
Wow.
Okay. Yeah.
I'll pass it over to Mark here.
I'm just wondering how you can stay afloat without making a new hazy IPA every week.
I've been lucky. Yeah. Luckily, the rest of our beers sell well.
I think that there's something special about your IPAs, and maybe it is that what you said, the slight British sensibility that's in there. Even though you're making, basically American IPAs or Kiwi IPAs, they're just a little bit maltier. They're never too sweet. They're hoppy, but they're not just like fruit juice. I think that you've managed to keep, and all the IPAs I've had from you in the last couple of years, you managed to just go right down the center. I think, it's not old school, but it's not trendy and just following those trends either. And I think, that this is something I really have appreciated lately with IPAs,
Yeah.
And I like the British stuff too, because it's so hard to find stuff now because it's like walls of New England IPAs everywhere,
Yeah,
true.
Brown ale or old ale or bitter, it's awesome,
Yeah.
So that's why I've been. So our IPAs are very popular, and we make a lot of them. The cool thing about that is that I can make these West Coast IPAs that have a modern twist on them, and they're popular, which means that I can still make best bitter, once every month and a half or so. It's not become, focusing on cash cow, like we've got to make hazy double IPAs, we've got to make hazy triple IPA next month. It's like there's a balance of making these good beers that allow me to still make the beers that I really want to make and that I really think Japan needs to have. Yeah.
Nice.
Yeah. Okay. Well, thank you very much, George. And now we're going to go on to the first of the four beers. Let me start. All right, and now we will look at another beer from TDM 1874 Brewery in Yokohama, Japan. And again, we're lucky to have the brewer, George Juniper, with us tonight. And we're going to look at this beer, which is called the Whole World Window. And it is a double IPA at 8.5%, 62 international bittering units. And George, I'm going to ask you to tell us a little bit about the name for this beer.
This the Whole World Window. This beer is sort of named in tribute of my favorite singer-composer, Tim Smith. It was singer and wrote all the music for Cardiacs, was the most well-known band he did. Yeah, got my Cardiac shirt on. Wasn't staged, but was wearing it anyway. Yes, and he died last summer, last July. So the beer is sort of named in his memory. Incredibly intelligent songwriter. Actually was given a honorary doctorate in composition a few years back. Not to everyone's taste. It's quite full on and pretty crazy music, but very, very intelligent. And so his music had a big impact on me and the way I listen to music. And so this was sort of wanted to pay tribute to him.
Was this the name of one of his songs?
One of the albums is called A Little Man, A House, and the Whole World Window. So this is the little man in the house.
Ah.
Okay. And this is
and then you can see there's a daisy on the window, lots of daisies on the window.
Mm.
The album, The Whole World Window, has got that daisy on the front of it. So there's, it's named after him, and then there's some imagery for the band as well.
Oh, okay, you have an hourglass on the back here. Is that also?
Yeah, it's in there as well. The little Cardiacs reference. Yeah.
Okay. So for those of you who are Cardiacs fans, you will get it. If you're not, go out and find out what it is. Okay. And so what we have here is a double IPA at 8.5%, 62 international bittering units on RateBeer. This one has only 2 ratings so far, and they're high. It's 3.95 out of 5. And on Untapped, this one comes in at with 85 ratings at 3.94, so almost identical. So pretty high ratings overall. Mm. And I see that this beer won an award at the International Beer Cup in Yokohama. George, can you tell us about that?
Yeah, this picked up silver last year for American Double IPA at International Beer Cup. And then a few months ago this year, we got 3rd place in the Plus Alpha Championship, which is Japan's version of Alpha King. Yeah, which is an IPA only competition.
Oh man, okay.
At the competition. Wow.
So
yeah.
Is that a new one?
Sorry?
How long has that competition been going?
This was the first year for it.
Oh.
Yeah, in Japan.
Okay.
Alpha King's been going quite a while in the US. Yeah, and some really big name breweries usually win it in the US.
So George, you said this is American IPA?
American Double IPA.
Double IPA, and you want to tell us about the malt and the hops in this one?
The malt on this is Canadian Pilsner. It's to make the hops shine. Yeah, really don't want too much malt getting in the way. Canadian Pilsner, I think just Canadian Pilsner, maybe a tiny bit of, yeah. And then there's some dextrose in there to try and make it dry. Like Mark was saying, there's a lot of very sweet finishing double IPAs, which I'm not a big fan of. And then the dextrose is there just to help it dry out.
I see. Okay, and the hops are?
Wow.
The hops are, let me think, Mosaic, Citra, Laurel, Cryo, Simcoe, and I believe some Equinox as well, maybe.
Okay. Yeah, this tastes much more familiar to me than, say, the New Zealand double IPA. I mean, the Mosaic and the Citra, certainly. Yeah.
Wow.
So this was meant to be a sort of the IPAs that I love, the American IPAs I love, are sort of in the style of Russian River, where they're very lean and well fermented, and aroma forward. So I wanted to take those, really those modern hops like Laurel, Citra, Mosaic, and put it with sort of more a bone dry American West Coast double IPA. The IBUs aren't crazy high on it, just because
62.
Yeah. I mean, it seems that craft beer is going that way as well, that less bitter beers are becoming more popular. Yeah.
Why do you think that is?
I guess it's off the back of the hazy IPA trend, but it's also things are modernizing a bit. what put me off American IPA at first was because my first exposure to American IPA was during the IBU wars, where everything's just unnecessarily bitter. So I kind of like that it's toned down a little bit now.
Yeah. I mean, we I don't know, it's been a while, but we used to see beers that listed, 100 or, more IBUs, and people say that you can't really register it, when it gets to that level. I mean, it's just basically blowing your taste buds out. And so I don't know how true that is, but certainly.
Yeah, I don't find them, I like bitterness, but then there's a point where it doesn't need to be that high. And I find it gives me a little bit more of a headache the next morning if they're really, really high IBU.
It certainly has enough bitterness. I mean, it's not an unbitter beer. It's bitter, but it's just right. It's
super fruity, pretty bitter.
Yeah. So by using a Pilsner malt, I mean, you've got this relatively light bodied double IPA, right? And that way you don't have this residual sugar, and therefore, the hops, as you said, you're featuring the hops, they really stand out. And so it's plenty bitter, but it's not aggressively, excessively so.
Yeah.
You said dextrose you added?
Yeah.
Dextrin malt or dextrose or what?
No, dextrin adds body, but dextrose is glucose essentially.
Right. So you're getting the alcohol.
You added dextrose or dextrin?
Dextrose, yeah. Dextrose.
I mean, it would do the similar thing to candy sugar in the Belgian beer, right? To make it lighter.
And is it a fermentable?
It's going to ferment all the way.
It's a fermentable. Okay, so you get some higher alcohol without too much.
It's almost entirely fermentable. So you'll add body through the alcohol, but you won't be adding extra residual sweetness. So you can get those. You can ferment those IPAs out a lot better.
Right.
Yeah.
So
which is that's the style of IPA I like.
Yeah, it's nice. It's very. I'm really pleasantly surprised at how dry it is. Again, seems to be the house style. But wow, yeah, nice, very nicely done.
To add to that, I'm just comparing it with the last sip of the New Zealand, which was plenty dry, but this is much drier. And so it's 1% more alcohol. When you compare them, there's way more body and a little bit more sweetness in New Zealand.
For double IPA.
Those modern hops like Citra, I find can get sort of, people will say, it's really sweet even when the beer is dry. And it's because they're these sort of tropical candy like aromas that are coming off of it. It gives a perceived sweetness. So the more you can dry out IPAs using those hops, the better balanced it is, I find.
You just have to ask you then, so why do people think they need to add lactose to one of these things?
Yeah, that's the. I mean, I like IPAs the old school way, where they're dry. But a lot of people are liking those more full body, sort of silky mouthfeels. So there's that. It's I definitely prefer this style.
George, can I ask you? Go ahead, Alan. Alan, go ahead.
Well, I was just curious about influences. You've mentioned we talked about the British influence in your brewing and so on. And I'm just curious, what are some breweries that you particularly admire or were influential for you in their style and so on?
In this style?
Well, yeah, I guess in the case of IPAs, for example, where they're like Thornbridge or something, or
Thornbridge make great beers, but the beers I love from them are beers on cask. So I didn't particularly I don't particularly enjoy cask IPAs. I like a little bit more, kick from the carbonation, bring the aromas up.
Sure, right.
So I guess more my influences from the UK, not so much because I left before IPAs were getting the way that they are now.
Sure.
So a lot of my IPA influences are from being in Japan and where I'd say Ballast Point used to be a big one. Like I mentioned, Russian River, they'd be another one. Those sort of really dry but high aroma West Coast IPAs. Bear Republic would be another one. Yeah, quite West Coast back when they used Green Flash back when they used to be good.
Okay. George, let me ask you a question now. Where you are now, what are you seeing yourself making in the next year or so? I mean, where do you see yourself moving in terms of beer and beer styles? What are you interested in doing at this point? What do you hope to be making? What would you like to do?
I mean, that question's been made really difficult to answer because of the pandemic. Like it's getting really difficult to decide what do we brew next week, let alone coming up in the future.
Okay.
What would I like to do? I'd like to, if we had a little bit more space, I'd like to start some more sort of barrel aging sours as well. It's something that I'd be interested in, but we just don't have the space to do it, in a clean and temperature controlled manner. We just don't really have the space to do that here right now. That's where I'd like to end up. But, it's been made difficult with the pandemic. A little bit more space as well. Like no, actually, I can say this summer, I'm trying some new things. So, going to be doing a Mexican lager, which we haven't made any lagers before, and a New Zealand Pilsner. Again, going back to the New Zealand hops, but New Zealand Pilsners are quite unique in themselves. Sort of those New World hops and quite hop forward. Actually, some of them almost feel a little bit like session IPAs. Again, wanting to use New Zealand hops. It's a style that I miss. So yeah, that'll be the first time we've made lagers, which I will start making soon. So I really wanted to have them out in the summer when those styles, are the best, basically. But,
Okay. Wait,
Good.
Is there
any chance that you mentioned cask ales? I mean, are we ever going to see this more come back in Japan? I mean, they were kind of halfway cask ales. I mean, they weren't really cask, but they were, real ale was kind of a thing when craft beer got started here.
That's right.
And it wasn't the same as in the UK, but it was often good. And now they're kind of gone. Do you think that there's any chance we're going to see this again from you or from anyone else?
Only as a hobby project, I think. The problem really is like, there's a few problems with it. One, bars in Japan don't have a cellar. They have a cold room and all their beers are sat at, maybe 5 degrees or lower, all their keg beers. Yeah, you can't put hand pump in there. And the other problem as well is like, once you tap a cask, you need to sell it in 3 days. And I don't know many bars that could sell the smallest size cask you'll get is 20 liters, which 20 liters is a big size keg in Japan. I don't know many bars that could sell a 4% bitter in 3 days, even if it's on cask.
Certainly,
so they're cool for festivals.
Festivals, yeah. Because I mean, I've told you before, I'd love to try your best bitter. on cask. You know, that would like be awesome.
Yeah.
Someday.
Yeah, I'd like to one day, but we'll see. It would be only for festivals though. Like it's just not. I don't think we're going to see it in bars popping up anytime soon. And there's a few bars around that have it, but a lot of them are sort of pseudo cask. I don't think we're going to see it the same way as in the UK, you know, where cask ale is wherever you go, which is a shame. But then again, I think it's getting hard to find cask ale in the UK now. Everything's
craft.
Everything seems to be hazy triple IPAs and
Well, let's have a toast to things that are not triple hazy IPAs, but just good solid double IPAs. George, thank you very much. Thank you very much for all the insight. I think I learned more about beer in just these last couple of hours in several years, really. Thank you, George, for all your expertise. And once again, this beer is called TDM 1874, The Whole World Window. And our brewer is George Juniper, who made this beer. Thank you very much. Thank you, Alan. Thank you, Mark. And especially thank you, George. Gentlemen, cheers.
Cheers.